Welcome to Swift Education Center's Equity Forward Forums for Educators, an ongoing series in which we connect educators and others who invest in the lives of young people with authors, thinkers, scholars, organizers, artists, and visionaries that inspire us in our work to build equity and join justice. We hope that you're inspired too. My name is Wade Kelly. I'm the Assistant Director of Content Development at Swift Education Center. Let's get started. Today is a great day because we're sitting down with Lorena Germán. Ms. Germán is the co-founder and academic director of Multicultural Classroom and the author of Textured Teaching, a framework for culturally sustaining practices. She is an immigrant from Dominican Republic who was raised in the U.S. Lorena has been in the field of education, working in various settings since 2001. Lorena has held educational leadership positions at the department level, school-wide level, and in larger district level, from designing curriculum to strategizing for improvement. She is the chair of the National Council of English Teachers Committee Against Racism and Bias in the Teaching of English. And she's a co-founder of Disrupt Texts, and she's also the director of pedagogy at Educolor. Lorena Germán, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to get into our conversation.
Yeah, we are super, super excited to have you here. I am a fan, so I'm not going to fanboy too much. We're just we're going to go ahead and talk and just be normal, but just know inside, on the inside, I'm fanboying.
Oh, that's so funny.
Okay, so yeah, let's just get into it. So what you and your partner, Roberto, do takes on many forms. So you do writing, coaching, teaching, speaking, making podcasts, consulting, professional development, all kinds of things. But can you share with us a little bit more about your why? So how did your personal journey inform your decision to focus on transforming classrooms toward equity and justice?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because obviously I know some of these questions, but still hearing them spoken out loud it's just different all over again. But this is the work that we do is very much in response to our own journeys, as well as an attempt to heal even what we've experienced in our own journeys. I'll speak for myself versus telling both of our stories. But for me, education was always something that I appreciated. My parents and I were immigrants, but they both had to stop their education early. And so when we came to the United States, from the beginning, if there was anything we were going to do in this country, it was going to be go to college and do well. Mm-hmm. And my family was always very supportive of anything that has to do with school, education, learning, classroom, homework, reading, writing. And so I had that big support at home, but that was not present at school. Teachers did not see that that was an interest, that I was already reading and writing at home, that I had a notebook full of stories, that I had a mini library in my bedroom, right? That was not, I was seen through this lens of a stereotype. I was just one of the other kids in that class. And, going through school, I can remember all the way back to middle school and high school. As I get older, I feel like my capacity for memory beyond that just dwindled.
Same.
Right. And so anyway, I never read a book where any character looked, sounded like, was from a place like me, be that Dominican Republic or a city like Lawrence, which is predominantly immigrants. And I didn't have, someone who said, look at this book written by someone like you, or just not a white person. Right? That you can actually learn from, that we can study here in our classroom, until I got to graduate school.
It's unbelievable.
And well, let me go back. My senior year, second semester of college, there was a course where the teacher introduced, it wasn't a book, we just watched a documentary. So that's why I kind of don't count it, but fine.
Right.
For the purpose of this conversation, and he was really on the ground, he was an activist, this white man, and he was like, I want y'all to see this. This has been banned here. And I was like, banned? What do you mean? And so we watched it, and I was just like really impacted. But all of that is to say that that lack of representation, that lack of affirmation of curriculum, that lack of exposure to topics other than what are typically covered in our schools, which means including our voices and our problems and our perspectives, was part of the impetus of how I even got into any of this work. One
Hmm.
of the things that I've said often in interviews and in conversations is that I became a teacher to be the teacher I never had. And that definitely is a burden and an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really heavy and it
Yeah.
feels like a lot of responsibility. And at the same time, for me, this is not a call to anyone else or judgment on anyone else, but for me, it also feels like I don't have another option, right? Like,
Mhm.
I love education. I love teaching and learning. I love the craft of teaching. I love being a student myself. And so if I loved plumbing, then that's what it would be, but I don't, right?
Right.
Like if I
Right.
loved, I don't know, driving, then that's what I would do, but this is it. And so the way that I do this is informed by what I didn't have, what I believe that I should have had, and what I want other people to have, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I mean, I understand the feeling of it's kind of on one side a little bit of a burden, but on the other side, you still have that like fourth grade Lorena in your
Yeah.
head, like you remember what it felt like
Yeah.
to have that void
Mhm.
and the challenges that sent ripples through your life,
Mhm.
because of not having those things. And so it's important enough that you're like, let me go ahead and do this.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
right. Yeah, for sure.
So culturally sustaining pedagogy is one of the primary methodologies that has influenced your strategy for change in education. Can you speak just for a moment on what CSP is, the importance of it in your work, and just feel free to talk about any strategies that you've used for its implementation as well?
Yeah. Um, a lot of people have heard of culturally relevant teaching, which is CRT.
Mhm.
And people have heard of culturally responsive pedagogy. And both of those are frameworks. They are kind of like, here's a theory of how to do a thing. And they're both valid and wonderful and written by separate people. I want to preface that. A lot of people conflate them as one. They're not. They're separate things. Related for sure, but separate. Anyway, then comes along Dr. Django Paris in about 2011-ish
Yep.
and conceptualizes culturally sustaining pedagogy, which is a way to say this work has been foundational. CRT and CRP have been foundational. We have to be relevant. We have to be responsive to, and we also have to move beyond that and be sustaining, right?
Mm.
We have so many ways of speaking, of engaging, of practicing literacy, of just being that schools have sought to get rid of, to vilify, to erase. And so what they're saying is we have to go beyond, they
Hmm.
call it a loving critique. We have to go beyond simply wanting to respond to what's happening or relate to kids, and really go deeper into sustaining what our schooling has attempted to erase, and in some places successfully done so.
Right.
Um, and so while culturally relevant teaching and culturally responsive teaching are theories and frameworks, culturally sustaining pedagogy is a stance. It is a why.
Mm.
And that's why I think um, teachers often find it hard to quote unquote implement. It doesn't come
Yes.
with 4 steps. It doesn't
Right.
come with a checklist. It is one of the questions that Dr. Paris pushes all of us to think of is who walks in with you when you walk into a room? Like who walks in with you?
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean who physically is walking in with you, right? But like not
Yeah.
only what education, but who are those professors that taught you these things? Who are your academic elders? Who are your actual elders in your life? Like who are your ancestors? All of that is walking in with you and simultaneously with students. And what can we do in these practices so that we go beyond a squared plus b squared equals c squared into like you're a mathematician and what does that now mean in your life? How are
Hmm.
you going to use that for our improvement,
Hmm.
right? And to participate in this democracy.
Hmm.
And so CSP is abstract in that way, right? That we would wish that it was a checklist. But what we've seen is that with the other two theories, the minute that you've put out somewhat of a framework, somewhat of a how-to, it's easily co-opted, and folks
Right.
want that checklist, and then it's watered down to
Right.
really cool handshakes at the door. And now
Right.
you're a culturally relevant teacher. And I think the door handshakes are fun,
They're
right?
fun.
They're not bad.
Right.
That
Right.
does not make you a culturally relevant teacher at
Exactly.
all. Even having dance breaks to the latest Drake song, that is not a culturally relevant teacher.
Right.
And so, right, all of that is to kind of contextualize what CSP is, but also why we need it and why we have to go deeper. And so when I learned about CSP, it was when Dr. Paris was conceptualizing it, and I got to be there when he was trying to think about, like, what is this thing that I'm describing, and naming it, and kind of articulating all that it is in a classroom.
Yeah.
And so I was able to say, "Ooh, that makes a lot of sense," and go and try things, and then figure out, like, what does this look like in my practice? And that's how we get to texture teaching, and that's how we get to everything that I do today. It's essentially me reflecting and saying, this is how I was embodying and
Right.
practicing this culturally sustaining approach. And so I talk about those strategies, specifically what that looks like, but there's so many ways, there's so many iterations of this. This is just my framework, my way of
Yeah.
saying CSP has looked like this for me. And I did that through texture teaching by talking about a teaching practice that has kind of like four anchors,
Yeah.
being student driven and community centered, um,
Right.
being flexible, being interdisciplinary, and ensuring that teaching and learning are experiential. And so that's kind of the gist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you were able to sink your teeth into it at at a very important moment in your own career, where you're able to you like turn it into something that was as you said, embody it. You were able to sort of like understand it on your own terms. And I find that sometimes when I'm having these conversations with editors, these conversations with educators,
Mhm.
that there is a little bit of frustration with which side are we coming down on? Are we coming down on the side where we have a list of things that we can check off, which is, what they're predominantly looking for, because they feel like they're already sort of overworked in a lot of ways and they don't have the capacity? Or then you have the other side where they love that essentially what we're saying is be creative, let it be emergent, try to
Mhm.
get some way to involve who you already are and what you're already
Mhm.
doing, and then make the adjustments around this
Right.
framework. Like I understand how sometimes it can be a little bit
Sure.
frustrating to know which one you're
Uh-huh.
you know
And I get that. I really do understand, which is why I ended up with a framework.
yeah,
Right?
right,
I
right,
did
right,
end up there, but that's not where I began. Right?
right,
It wasn't like I got the checklist. That means I am a culturally sustaining educator. It's like, no, no, no. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing this. These are the choices that I've made. This is my purpose in here. And
hmm,
that looks like this in
right,
action, right?
right,
And so it's kind of a different starting point. And the other thing I'll add real quick, Wade, is that I began doing CSP in what for me was to this day has been the most restrictive and oppressive educational environment.
oh,
I
that's
was
interesting.
told, I was told every book I was to teach, the order in which, what the objectives were, what the quizzes were,
Hmm.
and so I had to find ways there to say,
Mhm.
how on God's green earth am
Yeah,
I going to do this thing with this group of kids that no
yeah,
one has thought about? Because all they're
right,
thinking about is this material. They're not thinking about
right,
them,
right,
And
right,
so I share that often because I think people, um, not everybody who does the type of work that I do remembers what it's like to be in the classroom or has been in the classroom for a long time. And I always want to communicate, like, I have been right there. I'm not there right now. I hope to be back there.
yeah,
But I know what that is. And I have been, again, in the most repressive conditions where
mm,
I had to sneak things into my practice and my approach.
yeah, yeah. That reminds me of that book, Fugitive Pedagogy. I don't know if you've read that yet, but
I
that
haven't yet, but I got it. Yeah.
yeah, that's what that reminds me of. That sort of sneaking. So sometimes there's a little bit of like you got to fly under the radar a little bit if you
Yes.
want to do the most good.
Yep.
And that's like what you described, that's a heavy lift. I'm just thinking about this and I'm like, I know that we can't go into all the way into the weeds about that moment in your life and where you went with that, but could you land on like maybe what was like the first when you said to yourself, I
Hmm.
got to do this. There's no way around this. I got to do this. I got to make this my own.
Mm.
And when you sat down with that understanding, what was the first thing that you did?
It's a
Do
good
you
question.
remember?
Yeah, nobody's asked me that, and I just got a picture in my mind of that. I don't know that it was a moment, but it was a shift in my practice. Um, I as an educator of color, there are so many things that we walk in with our own baggage, right? Our own experiences and our own reasons and our own hesitations and our own whatever. And for me, it was really difficult to quote unquote be myself because this was always a place where I couldn't be myself. And so when I
Right.
became a teacher, it was like, oh, I've got to be strict and hard and cold and right. Like I was like, I have to put on this
Right. Right.
facade, right? My correct. I don't know what
Yeah.
this is, but that's it.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like
Yeah.
I got to put this thing on.
Right.
And that year I walked in and I said, I'm not going to put it on. Let's see how this goes.
Mm,
I have to shift this power dynamic. It
mm,
cannot be my show. This
mm.
isn't my classroom. Is this our classroom? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of
Mm.
me doing some of the hardest work because I'm also, when I became a teacher, I was young, kind of. What I mean is closer in age to them than some of my colleagues.
Yes.
And I was like, man, y'all gonna respect me no matter what, right? Like, that was a
Right.
concern for me.
Right. Right. Right.
And I was like, they can't know my age, like they can't know how young I am, and and it was also my own like imposter syndrome stuff, right? Like
Right.
I've got to fake it till I make it here. So it was
Right.
a combination of a lot of those things, and for me, the dynamics in all of my classrooms changed. The engagement increased with all of my students when
Hmm.
I decided to walk in and be a little bit more real, a little bit more myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like sometimes I feel like kiddos have like a sixth sense for authenticity.
Oh,
It's like their little antennas are just going and they
oh
just
yeah.
know it when
They're
they
like,
feel it.
nope, I see it. I see right through you, right?
Yeah.
And the power dynamics shifted, and then they were themselves, and I was
Yeah.
able to do some real work with them.
Yeah. You were
You
able to connect. Yeah. What did you say? You said, is
know?
it my classroom or is it our classroom?
Right.
That is a powerful question. That's really, what does it mean if it's our classroom? What does that actually mean? That's
Mhm.
really good.
That's why kids, would up until that point they'd be like, "Oh, I didn't do your homework," and that was always weird to me because I'm like, I get it, but it's not my homework; it's your homework. Like, how did we get here, right?
Yeah.
Or I didn't do your work, and I'm like, well, it's your work.
Right.
you
Right.
know and then it's just so transactional, right? Like your work, my grade.
Right. Right.
Right, and that's true, they're right, that is how it works. You turn a thing in, it's a transaction, it's an exchange, and then I give you a grade,
Mhm.
versus you learn and demonstrate your learning and earn a particular whatever we want to call it,
Right.
and I simply am here to facilitate this experience. That's a
Right.
different setup. So yeah, that
Right.
was a shift for me. Came directly from CSP.
Nice. Nice. Thank you for that. So I have another question here about educators.
My
Educators
fave.
what's that?
I said my fave.
Yeah.
My fave people go on.
Good. So educators have been stretched thin for decades. We all know this.
Yeah.
So now in the post-pandemic world, the same historical pressures occur that we're well aware of, but now we have this compounding effect of all kinds of other things like social, political climate, environmental, financial, you name it. So these are challenges that affect the lives of students and educators alike.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the effects that you've seen these factors, this pressure having on this work that you're doing, justice-centered work, and maybe just a few steps that you're taking to try to ensure that the work still moves forward even in this climate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Oh, there's like so much to say about this. We're seeing some trends that I'm preaching to the choir, so I won't dig into them, but we're seeing the trends of people leaving the field. We're
Yeah.
seeing the trend of students not wanting to go into education and colleges debating whether or not to shut down their college of education.
Right.
It's happened across the country in a number of different universities. We're seeing schools struggle to function, right, due to all the things we're seeing mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
Obviously for the entire nation, but we're seeing it show up in a particular way around behavior in schools and student behavior and
Mhm.
teacher absences and principals leaving. You know it's bad when principals are leaving.
Right.
Like you know it's bad when they are leaving.
Right.
And so right, like we have this context, and so what does it mean for me and my colleagues to come in and say, hey, don't forget about issues of race and bias, don't, right? It feels,
Right.
on one end it's like it feels like it's just not the moment, and on
Hmm.
the other end it's like, no, this is the moment,
Right.
because there's always going to be a reason not to do it. And in the
Right.
midst of all of this, we're seeing the news reports of, I don't know if you saw, Wade, that teacher, gosh, I don't even remember where this was, what state, but who put on like this feather headdress thing, and a math teacher, and went around and did this, I mean,
Oh, wow.
horribly offensive, insensitive, and ignorant parade of chanting of, I don't know what she thought it was, to like teach this math concept. And there were
Wow.
indigenous students in the room.
Well,
And
I'm
so
glad I missed that. That would have made, yeah, that would
that,
have ruined my day.
right?
Okay.
Or teachers using the N word for students, or teachers
Right.
physically assaulting students.
Right.
These are all instances of what Dr. Stephanie P. Jones has written about in the past about curricular violence. We see that was happening before pandemic, during pandemic, post pandemic, and whatever this is that we're in. I don't know if that we're post pandemic yet. Whatever this,
Yeah.
liminal space and time is,
Yeah.
we're seeing that it's still here. And so this is not work for us to push off or pause, but to embed, which is what we have always have been doing. So as part of schools and districts, new social and emotional learning initiatives, like you can't have effective SEL without it being trauma informed and
Right.
without it being anti-racist and anti-bias,
Absolutely.
right? And so that is what I have found to be the way to keep the conversation present in the work that schools are doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said about this moment of opportunity as well. Yeah, we have a lot of teachers leaving. Look at how easily some of our restrictions and policies and non-negotiables became negotiables during the pandemic.
Right.
All of a sudden, ain't nobody doing no standardized testing. We just can't.
Right. Homework. Yeah.
No homework,
No
out the window.
homework.
Oh, you're sick, you can be absent. Look at
Right.
that. Look at that, right?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden here in Florida, oh, all you need is to have been in the military. You can be a teacher now.
Right.
So these are also opportunities
Right.
for folks of color who in the past were barred for a number of different reasons. This is an opportunity for us to step in
Mm-hmm.
and to not only just simply offer representation. Our bodies as educators in spaces of education are in and of themselves a form of resistance.
Right.
You might be, which was the case for me, you might be the only black teacher, black math teacher a kid has had in all of their elementary education.
Right.
For me, I was the only Dominican immigrant woman English teacher those kids had had
Yeah.
as a high school English teacher, right?
Mm.
And so that in and of itself is an opportunity. And then what we always bring in, what we always teach, our points of view, and positioning ourselves, as Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings talks about, as an authority in a classroom, an intellectual authority. That's important. That's
Mm.
important, right? And so it is a difficult time. I stepped out of the classroom I taught through pandemic, and then stepped out when I was pregnant. And it was like there still wasn't enough research on like what is this a good thing? Can you be around people? And so for that, and to protect me, my family decided we're gonna keep you home.
Right. Right.
And I understand what it is somewhat. Somewhat. I know that there's this level of exhaustion right now that is quite unique. And unless you're in a classroom in this moment, you don't know it. I get that part.
Mhm.
And I also get that, effective teaching, particularly for educators of color, has always been exhausting.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
right? It has always been a situation where we are in a difficult context, getting challenged by colleagues, by admin, by students, and by parents and
Mhm.
society. Like, right? And so I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Such a big question, and I don't even know how to answer it than to acknowledge the weight, the vastness of it, and also to stay encouraged. And one of the things that I am finding, and I'll wrap it up with this weight, is that wherever so far in the research that I've been doing and the news that I'm paying attention to, where we find a district or a school
Mhm.
that has banned a book or curated a new list or identified topics not to be explored.
Uh-huh.
You find a neighboring district that is like, we are going to be so opposite of that, we're going deep dive.
Huh.
And whether it's a neighboring school or a neighboring district, it doesn't fail.
That's
It
interesting.
doesn't fail. You've got districts here in the state of Florida that are like, don't say gay, don't teach about gender until the kid is in fourth grade, like policies written right now by DeSantis. And then you've got districts like schools within like Hillsborough or in Pinellas County, where it's like, where do we get the next social justice book?
Huh.
Where do we get the next speaker to come in? How can we diversify the library? Where are the funds? Right. And so that is very encouraging that people are seeing some of this behavior and doing their very best to say, I am not like that. I'm going to stand for truth and I'm going
Mhm.
to value what it is to be a good citizen in our nation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so fascinating that I mean, it illustrates the polarization,
Yes.
that we're experiencing as well. But it also, like you said, there's that duality to that because it's also an opportunity when people are saying the quiet part out loud, then you can go ahead and tell it like it is.
Right. And
So,
and that when people are saying the quiet part out loud, that there are people who might not be saying anything, but they're acting it out.
yep,
They're doing the right thing. They're not going to get up and argue and say all the things. I'm just going to do the thing. So when
yep,
parents were showing up and opening up their crazy mouths, saying all kinds of things at these school committee meetings, you had people, parents in other districts organizing and saying, how can we support our teachers? How can we get them wish lists off of Amazon? How can we get these books in there? Going to the libraries and asking for these books. Like there was a library recently, oh my gosh, I can't remember the state. Was it? I can't remember. I don't want to misspeak. But there was this library, and a parent showed up and said, why do you have this book here? And the librarian is like, I'm going to have all the books here. Okay? Like, all the books are going to be here. And so
hmm,
this parent went all the way to the city, like town hall or whatever,
yeah,
and pushed a motion. And the city council voted to shut this library down. Okay?
wow,
So the library is now it's like it's slated to be shut down.
yeah.
Oh no, it is not. Community came out. People came out from all over the place and were like, we're keeping this thing open. They funded it. They're paying the librarian. Like they're doing everything to keep that thing open.
Yeah, yeah, good. I love the community the
Oh
community
yeah.
connection is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
We talk about that a lot, which actually brings me to my next question. We talk about that some in the 10-point paradigm. At Swift, we have this, what we call the 10-point paradigm is just a framework for how to center equity and justice in every layer of the work that we're doing in education. I shared that framework with you previously. Were there any points from that paradigm that particularly resonated with you and why?
Yeah. I've been in my work, I've been reading a whole lot of position statements, missions, equity statements.
Hmm.
And very rarely do I find ones that really attempt to encompass what needs to be done in a holistic way. I recently encountered one in San Antonio, which was super encouraging. And then I find that this paradigm is really inclusive of so much of the work that has to be done. And so while I can probably make connections and expand upon every every point on there, I think that the decolonized perspective, as well as tell the whole story, really speak to my work, or my work connects with
Yeah.
that. My work is an iteration of a decolonization.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that in the way that it's becoming a buzz phrase and a catch-all, right? A catch-all approach.
Right.
But really to think about indigenous knowledge systems, indigenous voices, welcoming them and anchoring our work in that as well.
Mhm.
That's why, for example, texture teaching begins with the individual and not with productivity or what is success, but like who are these people in front of us and what community are they from? Who are their elders?
Yeah.
That's why we start there. And that's why as part of the community centered piece, I talk about how, regardless of where you are, I don't care who are the students, you could be in a predominantly white suburban community, you can be in the middle of Harlem, right? Like everyone has land acknowledgement work to do, understanding of indigeneity and indigenous communities and history wherever they are. So that's why that perspective matters, because then it begins to shift everything else that you do after. And that's why you have to tell the whole story, right? That's why the other point makes sense to me as well in
Yeah.
relationship to that. This week, I think it was Ron DeSantis and the other person running for governor, Chris, had a debate. And one of DeSantis's points was, some of these teachers are telling students that Florida was built on stolen land. This is inappropriate. And
Oh no.
right, the audience did what you just did. And I was like, Lord have mercy, Lord. But that's why we have to tell the whole truth. And that's why
Right.
we tell the whole story. Because that doesn't mean that right now, then, what does that mean? We're evil? No, like we're here, this is what it is, fine. Are there things that we can do to make amends for
Yeah.
atonement? Yes. And it still doesn't mean that you're a bad person, which is really the ultimate fear that these people have, right? And
Right.
so, or that you're gonna lose power, right? Like, guess what? You're still gonna be a white guy in this system. Like, you're still gonna have your power, unfortunately. So, right, like teaching that whole truth requires
Mhm.
this decolonized, anti-racist, anti-bias perspective, so that we can get to the real work of being humans and working to heal all of these collective experiences that we've had, right? There's like this individual healing based on what I've experienced as a person. And then there's also the healing that I need to feel as part of being a woman in this country, as
Mhm.
part of being an immigrant in this country, that are experiences that other women have had, that other immigrants have had, that other brown people have had, etc.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, so you had just mentioned about healing, and so that kind of that's kind of a good segue into my next question, which is about restoration. So can you talk a little bit about what it means for you in the educational experience to be restorative for both students and educators? So how are schools
Mhm.
uniquely positioned within society to take on this idea of restoration?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, schools are uniquely positioned because they have been part of the project. They've been
Hmm.
part of the project of whiteness, of white supremacy, of these institutions that have caused so much harm. When we think about for example, what it means to be an indigenous person in this country, part of that experience includes everything that has to do with assimilation schools. We
Hmm.
are quite literally in 2022 unearthing the bodies of children.
Right.
So going to school was a matter of life and death.
Hmm.
It wasn't about, am I going to get an A on my spelling quiz? It was, do I want to stop being who I was born to be?
Right.
Right? Like that is so,
That's heavy.
that's all the words: heavy, hard, serious, painful, traumatizing, enduring.
Hmm.
Right? What it has been to be an African American in this country includes that literacy was illegal for me. It was a life and death situation.
Hmm.
During the period of enslavement, I could have been killed for knowing how to read or write.
Right.
If I am, a person like I am a Latina, right? It has meant that I have to not have an accent to be seen as successful. I
Hmm.
have to reject my own culture. I have to anglicize my name. I
Hmm.
have to stop speaking my language so that I can, get access to the jobs and be successful. So stop being who I am. That is
Right.
a that is both a metaphorical violence, and it has also been a physical one when I could be spanked in schools in the Southwest for speaking Spanish.
Right.
right? And as an Asian person, Asian American person, that has had its own violence, right? To be a model minority has
Right.
meant to position myself against other groups of color, and
Right.
to, by my success, be seen as and practice a form of anti-blackness. And then
Right.
I got to live up to this,
Right.
and I got to put my nose up to others, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
this experience of education has been implicated in that big project from its inception. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, sure, we can say that we're uniquely positioned. We're also like we better,
Right.
like
Right.
like we better get it together
Fundamentally
and
positioned.
do our part in
Right.
healing. When I think about public schools and private schools, like there are so many ways to think about the ways that education has been implicated in this, right? Like private schools came from white flight, from white folks saying we will not integrate. And so
Mm-hmm.
private schools have from their inception functioned as places to keep the rest of us out.
Right.
And so every institution, everyone has work to do. And then what does it mean that now I'm a person of color and can be seen as an agent of the state?
Right.
And what does that do to me based on my own, right? Like the layers of it all.
Right.
And so we don't have the luxury to say, oh, let me add anti-bias work to my profession.
Mm,
That's what I mean about embedded. Like, no, you
right.
should be in this field because in addition to wanting to teach geography, you want to teach the truth about geography. You want people to know what it is,
Right.
what a border is, and how it's man-made, and how it has a political agenda, and it's not a real thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so anyway,
absolutely.
that's a long-winded way of saying that's a long-winded way of saying that there is a lot of work to do, and doing that work, in my opinion, and for all of my colleagues really who do this work, and I'm sure for you, being an educator is those things.
Right.
It's not an add-on. It's not a special degree. It's
Right.
not a course you took. It's
Right.
not a unit.
Right.
See what I mean? It is
It's
the way. That's why CSP, that's what I appreciate about CSP being a stance and not
right.
a framework. It is a
Right.
positionality.
Mm-hmm.
It is my angle from which everything else comes out of.
Right.
You know? I
Yeah.
don't know if I answered your question. I think I
Yeah,
did.
absolutely. You absolutely did. I mean, CSP reminds me in a lot of ways of, the idea of intersectionality or the idea of solidarity or whatever. There's these principles that they are just fundamentally sort of um, about grassroots, like the very bedrock of where you spring from. It's not about just sort of painting things over and sort of reworking things. I mean, that's sort of what the powers that be want us to do. They want us to take the slow, tedious time of just, sort of trying to spin this thing that is just not working. And, we need to really have a systemic approach where we get out into the roots and then start from there. No, you absolutely answered my question. That was really good. So, in closing, I just want to say thank you very much
Sure.
for collaborating with us and spending a little time this morning or afternoon where you are, to talk with us. And I hope that sometime in the future we can reconnect and see what else you're doing, what the
Yeah,
new chapter in your life is going to be. And
absolutely.
so thank you very much, Lorena Germán.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you for these great questions, and I'm hopeful that they can be of help to educators, right? To folks doing this work who might feel affirmed or might feel challenged.
Mhm.
And maybe they might feel like now they have some homework. That's good.
Back to homework.
Right?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this Equity Forward Forum for Educators. Please follow Swift Education Center on social media and visit swiftschools.org for more information on who we are and what we do. Until next time, lead with love and center the kiddos.